Captain Aris Volt leaned against the cool metal railing of the Marauder's command bridge, staring out at the star-studded void that stretched endlessly before him. Beyond the reinforced glass of the viewport, the silent ballet of cosmos played out, a stark contrast to the tension simmering among his crew. The edge of the Galactic Union's territory, Volt muttered to himself, his voice a low rumble that barely rose above the whisper of the ship's life support systems. This was the boundary of known space, beyond which lay the forbidden sector, shrouded in rumors and tightly guarded secrets. Volt's gaze was like flint, sharp and sparking with the thrill of the imminent. Around him, the bridge was a hive of subdued activity. His crew navigated the Marauder with a quiet efficiency born of countless raids and close escapes. They were outlaws, yes, but outlaws bound by a shared quest for the forbidden. The captain turned, his heavy boots thudding softly as he faced his navigator, an old friend with eyes as dark as the void outside. "Jax, plot a course. Take us as close as you dare before we cloak." Jax nodded, his fingers dancing across the console with practiced ease. The ship's screens flickered with data streams, mapping the invisible lines that demarcated safe space from the uncharted. As the Marauder coasted silently toward the invisible line separating law from legend, Volt couldn't shake the chill that danced up his spine. It was the thrill of the unknown, mixed with a caution hardened by years in the void. The sector they aimed to breach was said to be cursed, home to specters, and worse, according to spacefarer lore. Volt clasped his hands behind his back, feeling the cold metal of the command bridge's door handle under his grasp. "This is it," he announced, his voice steady, projecting a calm he fought hard to maintain. "Beyond this point, we're not just defying the law, we're defying fate itself." The crew paused, the weight of his words hanging in the air like the cold of space itself. Volt's second-in-command, a grizzled veteran named Corin, stepped up beside him, his scarred face serious. "They say the stars watch more closely in the forbidden sector," he said quietly, enough for only Volt to hear. Volt gave a tight smile, his eyes never leaving the dark expanse ahead. "Then let's give them something to watch," he replied. As the Marauder slipped silently over the boundary and engaged its cloaking device, the stars seemed to flicker, as if blinking in surprise. Or perhaps it was just a trick of the light. Either way, Captain Aris Volt knew that their journey into the forbidden would change everything. They were either going to come out legends, or not at all. As the Marauder vanished from the visible spectrum, the silence of space enveloped them like a shroud. Captain Aris Volt felt the slight vibration through the deck as the stealth technology engaged, a sensation more felt than heard, signaling their passage into the uncharted. Outside, the stars shifted, their light bending around the cloak's distortion field. Corin stood at Volt's side, his gaze fixed on the sensor array. "All clear, Captain." "No traces of our entry," he reported, his voice a soft rasp that didn't quite hide his underlying tension. Volt nodded, his focus on the navigational charts displaying their trajectory through the forbidden sector. The darkness ahead seemed to swallow the beam of their forward lights, an abyss calling to them with silent whispers. The taste of recycled air mixed with a hint of copper told its own tale of a ship long in service. Each breath they took was a reminder of the isolation inherent in their mission. Volt walked through the bridge, his steps measured, his hand brushing against the cold, seamless console surfaces, grounding himself in the reality of their journey. "Prepare to bypass the outer markers," he instructed Jax, who nodded and adjusted their heading with subtle taps on his display. The navigator's eyes, reflecting the starlight, were alert for any anomaly that might spell disaster. The subtle shift in the ship's ambiance marked their crossing into the heart of the sector. Volt felt it in the pit of his stomach, a tightening that had nothing to do with gravity. He glanced at his crew, each member taut with the focus their task required. Their shared resolve was palpable, a silent pact forged in the void between stars. Suddenly, a low crackle over the comm broke the tension. "Captain, picking up something odd on the long-range scan. It's not..." "Visual," reported Scylla, the communications officer, her voice tinged with uncertainty. Volt approached her station, peering at the data. The screen showed a series of erratic blips, forming a pattern that defied normal space phenomena. "Audio. Let's hear it," he decided. Sila nodded, adjusting the frequency. A series of soft clicks and whistles filled the bridge, an alien melody that seemed both beautiful and foreboding. It was like listening to the ghostly echoes of a cosmic whale song, a sound that resonated in their bones more than their ears. Corrin's expression darkened. "Signals in the void. Bad omen," he muttered, almost to himself. Volt placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "Or a beacon," he countered, his voice firm with a hint of intrigue. "Keep us moving, Jax. Let's find the source." As the Marauder crept forward, the temperature in the bridge dropped slightly, the ship's systems adjusting to the external environment's subtle anomalies. Each breath they exhaled now formed faint mists, visual testament to the creeping cold that the sector's mystery imposed upon them. Volt's skin tingled with the chill, a visceral reminder of the stakes. His gaze returned to the viewport, watching the stars that now seemed to watch back, their twinkling like the eyes of unknown watchers hidden in the deep. With every passing moment, the Marauder sailed deeper into the enigma, drawn inexorably towards whatever secrets lay hidden in the shadows of this forbidden realm. As the Marauder sliced through the cosmos, the faint clicks and whistles of the unknown signal grew stronger, weaving through the cabin like a siren's call from ancient maritime tales. Captain Aris Volt leaned closer to the main console, his reflection a ghost upon the glass, his eyes narrow slits of concentration. "Enhance the audio. Isolate the pattern," he commanded, his voice barely above a whisper, as if loudness might shatter the fragile thread of discovery they were pulling. Sila, her fingers poised with precision, adjusted the dials, and the haunting melody poured into the space between them. Clearer now. Corrin, standing by the captain's chair, grunted softly. "Sounds like a lullaby," he remarked, the metaphor hanging in the air like a promise of peace in their relentless journey. Volt turned to him, a wry smile flickering across his face. "A lullaby or a dirge, depending on what waits for us at the source," he replied, his tone laced with a dry humor that did little to mask the underlying steel of his resolve. The bridge was bathed in a dim glow from the console lights, casting long shadows that danced across their faces as the ship moved. Outside, the blanket of stars seemed to pulse in rhythm with the eerie sounds, a cosmic dance of light and darkness. Jax called out from his station, "Approaching the coordinates, Captain." The source is located on a small celestial body, not charted on any star map. As they neared the mysterious planetoid, the texture of space changed. The darkness deepened, the stars smudged by an unseen hand, and the void itself seemed to thicken. Volt felt a chill snake down his spine, the cold of the unknown that was both thrilling and terrifying. He stood, his presence commanding attention. "All hands brace for approach. Eyes sharp. We don't know what we're dealing with here," he announced, his voice carrying the weight of command and the burden of responsibility for the souls under his charge. The Marauder edged closer, its sensors probing the darkness ahead. The planetoid revealed itself slowly, a crescent of rock illuminated by a distant sun, its surface a tapestry of shadows and light. "A dead world," Corrin muttered, his words floating across the bridge like leaves on a still pond. "Not dead, sleeping," Volt corrected softly, his gaze fixed on the looming shape ahead. The metaphor felt right. This was not a place of death, but of secrets buried deep, waiting to be awakened. Suddenly a shudder ran through the ship, a groan of metal that felt like the breaking of a giant's bones. The crew tensed, their bodies instinctively bracing against an unseen assault. "Report!" Volt barked, his calm facade cracking with the urgency of the moment. Sila responded, her voice steady despite the tension. "No collision, Captain. It's the gravitational pull, stronger than anticipated, adjusting thrusters to compensate." Volt nodded, his mind racing with the possibilities of what they might find on this slumbering rock. Was it guarding something precious, something ancient, or were they merely chasing ghosts across the galaxy? As the Marauder settled into orbit, the haunting melody that had led them here faded, replaced by the silence of anticipation. They were on the threshold of discovery, standing at the door to a room long locked. What lay behind it, Volt knew, could change everything. The silence that settled over the Marauder as it orbited the mysterious planetoid was like the calm before a storm. Captain Aris Volt stood at the viewport, his eyes reflecting the ghostly light of distant stars, his mind racing with the possibilities of what lay beneath the surface of this enigmatic world. "Looks quiet," Corin observed, his voice a soft rumble in the hushed atmosphere of the bridge. "Quiet like the depths of the ocean back on Terra. You never know what monsters lurk below," Volt replied, his metaphor drawing a tight nod from his second-in-command. Volt turned from the viewport and strode toward the holographic map that hovered above the main console. The topography of the planetoid unfolded in layers of digital contours, a silent testament to the unseen forces that had shaped its barren landscape. "Jax, take us in closer. I want a detailed scan of the surface," he instructed, his tone clipped with the urgency of discovery. The navigator complied, his hands gliding over the controls with the grace of a seasoned pilot. As the Marauder descended through the thin atmosphere, the surface of the planetoid came into sharper focus, crags and ravines that spoke of ancient geological upheavals. "The scans aren't picking up much, Captain. It's desolate. But there are anomalies in the magnetic field," Jax reported, his brow furrowed in concentration. "Magnetic anomalies could mean hidden deposits, or something else entirely," Scylla chimed in, her voice tinged with curiosity. Volt's gaze hardened with determination. "Prepare the landing party. Corin, you're with me. We're going down there." The preparation for the landing was a ritual of checks and balances. Each member of the crew moved with a purpose, securing their gear, their movements a dance of precision honed by countless similar missions, yet none quite like this. As they suited up, the taste of recycled air mixed with the tang of anticipation. Their suits were tight against their bodies, the fabric a second skin that promised protection against the unknown. The descent to the surface was a ballet of thrusters and gravity, the Marauder touching down on the alien soil with a softness that belied the tension aboard. As the hatch opened, a gust of alien wind swept into the cabin, carrying with it the scent of dust and a faint, unidentifiable trace of something organic, as if the planet breathed a sigh of relief at being discovered. Volt stepped onto the surface, his boots crunching on the gravelly soil. The landscape stretched out before them, a tableau of desolation under a starlit sky, the silence so profound it was almost a physical presence. "This place is a tomb," Corin whispered, his voice carrying a reverent tone. "Or a treasure chest," Volt countered, his eyes scanning the horizon where the planet's curve met the dark sky. They ventured further, their path illuminated by the beams from their suits. Every step raised a puff of dust that hung in the air, suspended in the weak gravity, creating a mist that swirled around them like the spirits of the planet. Suddenly, the ground beneath them shuddered, a tremor that sent a ripple through the soil and up through their boots into their bones. "Seismic activity," Jax's voice crackled over the comm, his tone an octave higher with anxiety. "Or the planet waking up," Volt replied, his words heavy with metaphorical weight, as they stood firmly on the shifting ground, ready to face whatever secrets this sleeping giant chose to reveal. As the ground beneath them settled, Captain Aris Volt surveyed the alien landscape, his senses heightened by the tremor. The planetoid's air was thin, carrying a chill that seeped through even their advanced suits, and the faint scent of something akin to burnt charcoal tickled their nostrils, a reminder of volcanic activity possibly hidden beneath the surface. Corin, always vigilant, scanned the horizon with a handheld sensor. "Radiation levels are nominal, but there's a strange pattern to the magnetic fields here. It's almost rhythmic, like a pulse," he reported, his voice low, tinged with both awe and caution. Volt nodded, peering into the dusky landscape where jagged shadows cast by their lights danced against the stark gray rocks. "Let's follow that pulse. It might lead us to the source of these anomalies." The small team moved cautiously, their path illuminated only by the beams from their helmets. The silence of the planet was complete, a stark void where even the sound of their own breaths seemed to be swallowed by the endless expanse. As they traversed a narrow ridge, the ground beneath them crackled slightly underfoot, the brittle crust breaking in sharp, clear snaps that echoed oddly in their helmets. Ahead, the terrain dipped into a wide valley, and it was from here that the magnetic pulses seemed to emanate. Volt paused, taking in the view. The valley floor was veiled in darkness, but occasional flashes of light, pale and fleeting, suggested something more than mere geological phenomena. "Sensors are picking up an energy spike from the valley." Sila's voice came through their comms, her tone laced with both excitement and tension. "It's unlike any energy signature we've recorded." Volt exchanged a look with Corin, who merely nodded, his usual stoicism giving way to a ripple of anticipation. "We go in. Eyes open, everyone. This could be what we're looking for," Volt commanded, his voice decisive, pushing back against the unknown. Volt's gaze hardened with determination. "Prepare the landing party. Corin, you're with me. We're going down there." The preparation for the landing was a ritual of checks and balances. Each member of the crew moved with a purpose, securing their gear, their movements a dance of precision honed by countless similar missions, yet none quite like this. As they suited up, the taste of recycled air mixed with the tang of anticipation. Their suits were tight against their bodies, the fabric a second skin that promised protection against the unknown. The descent to the surface was a ballet of thrusters and gravity, the Marauder touching down on the alien soil with a softness that belied the tension aboard. As the hatch opened, a gust of alien wind swept into the cabin, carrying with it the scent of dust and a faint, unidentifiable trace of something organic, as if the planet breathed a sigh of relief at being discovered. Volt stepped onto the surface, his boots crunching on the gravelly soil. The landscape stretched out before them, a tableau of desolation under a starlit sky, the silence so profound it was almost a physical presence. "This place is a tomb," Corin whispered, his voice carrying a reverent tone. "Or a treasure chest," Volt countered, his eyes scanning the horizon where the planet's curve met the dark sky. They ventured further, their path illuminated by the beams from their suits. Every step raised a puff of dust that hung in the air, suspended in the weak gravity, creating a mist that swirled around them like the spirits of the planet. Suddenly, the ground beneath them shuddered, a tremor that sent a ripple through the soil and up through their boots into their bones. "Seismic activity," Jax's voice crackled over the comm, his tone an octave higher with anxiety. "Or the planet waking up," Volt replied, his words heavy with metaphorical weight, as they stood firmly on the shifting ground, ready to face whatever secrets this sleeping giant chose to reveal. As the ground beneath them settled, Captain Aris Volt surveyed the alien landscape, his senses heightened by the tremor. The planetoid's air was thin, carrying a chill that seeped through even their advanced suits, and the faint scent of something akin to burnt charcoal tickled their nostrils, a reminder of volcanic activity possibly hidden beneath the surface. Corin, always vigilant, scanned the horizon with a handheld sensor. "Radiation levels are nominal, but there's a strange pattern to the magnetic fields here. It's almost rhythmic, like a pulse," he reported, his voice low, tinged with both awe and caution. Volt nodded, peering into the dusky landscape where jagged shadows cast by their lights danced against the stark gray rocks. "Let's follow that pulse. It might lead us to the source of these anomalies." The small team moved cautiously, their path illuminated only by the beams from their helmets. The silence of the planet was complete, a stark void where even the sound of their own breaths seemed to be swallowed by the endless expanse. As they traversed a narrow ridge, the ground beneath them crackled slightly underfoot, the brittle crust breaking in sharp, clear snaps that echoed oddly in their helmets. Ahead, the terrain dipped into a wide valley, and it was from here that the magnetic pulses seemed to emanate. Volt paused, taking in the view. The valley floor was veiled in darkness, but occasional flashes of light, pale and fleeting, suggested something more than mere geological phenomena. "Sensors are picking up an energy spike from the valley." Sila's voice came through their comms, her tone laced with both excitement and tension. "It's unlike any energy signature we've recorded." Volt exchanged a look with Corin, who merely nodded, his usual stoicism giving way to a ripple of anticipation. "We go in. Eyes open, everyone. This could be what we're looking for," Volt commanded, his voice decisive, pushing back against the unknown. Suddenly, the floor beneath them shifted slightly, a subtle reminder of the planetoid's active geological life, or perhaps something more. The thrumming increased, a crescendo that felt like it was building towards something inevitable. Corin scanned the panel closely. "These aren't just decorations. They're controls," he concluded, his tone a mix of excitement and concern. "We could be standing in the control room of this entire structure." Volt's mind raced with the implications. If they could understand how to interact with these controls, the possibilities were limitless. But the risk of activating an unknown technology, potentially armed and guarded, was high. "Let's map these patterns. They might give us a clue about how to interact safely," he suggested, turning to Sila, who had already begun recording the intricate designs. As they worked, the pulsating light from the chamber walls began to sync more closely with the thrumming under their feet, a symphony of light and vibration that enveloped them in its alien cadence. The sensation was disorienting, as if the chamber itself was communicating through these sensory experiences, drawing them deeper into its mysteries. "Be ready for anything," Volt cautioned, his voice a steady command. "This place isn't just a relic. It's a remnant of something much bigger, and we've just scratched the surface." They continued, surrounded by the pulse of a long-dormant heart coming to life, each beat echoing their own mounting anticipation and unease. As they mapped the enigmatic patterns on the walls, a sudden clarity came upon Captain Volt. The pulsations, rhythmic and insistent, weren't just random energy discharges but appeared to be a form of communication, perhaps a way the city itself interacted or maintained its functions. Volt's focus was interrupted by a soft, echoing click that resonated through the chamber. The sound, organic and deliberate, seemed to emanate from the very walls around them, as if the city recognized their presence and was responding. "Did you hear that?" he asked, turning to his crew, his voice laced with a mix of curiosity and caution. "Yes, Captain," Sila replied, her tone equal parts wonder and wariness. "It's almost like a response to our actions." The air in the chamber shifted, growing cooler as a subtle breeze swept through, carrying with it a faintly floral scent, unplaceable and alien, yet undeniably there. This gentle gust stirred the dust at their feet, swirling patterns that mimicked the glowing lines on the walls. Volt stepped closer to a panel, his hand hovering over its surface. "Let's try something," he said, his decision made. Gently, he pressed a sequence on the panel, mirroring the pattern they had just mapped. The response was immediate. The floor beneath them vibrated softly, and the walls pulsed with a brighter light, the glow intensifying in waves that synced with the vibrations. The entire chamber seemed to come alive, the alien technology responding to Volt's touch with an eager readiness that was both exhilarating and terrifying. "Look at this," Corin called out, gesturing towards the far end of the chamber where a section of the wall had begun to shift, retracting to reveal a narrow passageway bathed in a soft, amber light. Volt's heart raced as he led his team towards the newly revealed corridor. The walls of the passage were smooth, the material almost liquid to the touch, and the light that filled the space was warm, comforting in its glow yet foreign in its source. The passageway led them deeper into the heart of the structure, each step forward amplifying their sense of venturing into the unknown. The soft clicks continued, now accompanied by a low, melodious tone, like wind chimes stirred by a gentle breeze. The sound was calming, designed perhaps to soothe or to guide. As they reached the end of the corridor, they entered a vast atrium. The ceiling arched high above them, embedded with what appeared to be a star map, constellations unfamiliar and uncharted. Beneath their feet, a mosaic floor depicted scenes of celestial navigation and cosmic events, the artistry breathtaking in its complexity and beauty. Volt paused, overwhelmed by the sight. "This isn't just a city or a machine," he whispered, awestruck. "It's a cathedral, a place of worship or reverence, dedicated to the cosmos itself." The atrium felt sacred, a sanctum of ancient knowledge waiting patiently for those brave enough to uncover its secrets. The sense of historical depth, the weight of untold stories that filled the space, was palpable, pressing in on them with the promise of revelations yet to come. "We're not just explorers. Volt said to his crew, his voice steady and sure. "We're pilgrims, and this place, it's a pilgrimage site, meant to teach us something profound." Around them, the chamber seemed to approve, the glowing lights pulsating gently, as if in agreement with Volt's realization. They stood together in silence, united in their awe and the anticipation of what mysteries lay waiting in the heart of this alien cathedral. Absorbed by the celestial grandeur of the atrium, Captain Volt and his team moved further into the heart of the alien cathedral. The gentle glow from the walls bathed them in a pale golden light, which cast elongated shadows behind them as they walked. The air was tinged with a crisp mineral scent, cold and clean, as if purified by the ancient technology still alive around them. Volt reached out to trace his fingers along a depiction of a solar event etched into the wall. The etching was intricate, its edges smooth and worn by eons, yet the details were preserved with an uncanny precision that spoke of a civilization that had mastered not just technology, but also the art of preservation. This was a place of learning, possibly a library or observatory, Corin suggested, his voice hushed in reverence, echoing softly around the vast chamber. Volt nodded, his gaze following the lines of the star map overhead, each constellation pulsating subtly with a rhythm that seemed to mimic the natural pulsing of a heart. Or both. These people didn't just study the stars, they celebrated them. As they ventured deeper, the floor beneath them subtly shifted, the tiles ever so slightly realigning themselves as if to create a path forward. Silas stopped, bending to examine the floor. "It's like the path is being formed in real time, responding to our movements," she observed, a note of wonder in her voice. Her statement was punctuated by a low resonant tone that filled the chamber, a sound that felt both welcoming and ominous. It vibrated through their bodies, resonating with their bones in a way that was almost comforting. The path led them to a central dais, upon which rested a large, translucent orb. The orb pulsed with light, its core a swirling mass of colors that mimicked the nebulae sprawled across the chamber's ceiling. Volt stepped closer, his eyes locked on the mesmerizing display within the orb. "It's a model," he murmured, almost to himself. "A model of the galaxy." Around the orb, panels lit up with a soft light, activating as his presence neared. Text in an unknown script scrolled across the surfaces, inviting interaction. Corin, examining one of the panels, gently touched a glyph, and the text shifted, transforming into a series of images that depicted various cosmic phenomena, supernovas, black holes, and gravitational waves. Each image was accompanied by a series of sounds, low and musical, which filled the chamber with a symphony of the stars. Their language wasn't just visual, it was auditory too, Sila noted, captivated by the display. They used sounds to explain complex astronomical concepts. As the team absorbed the information, the real mystery deepened. The civilization that built this cathedral was not just advanced. They had a profound connection to the cosmos, one that they had encoded in every aspect of their architecture and technology. Volt looked around at his crew, their faces lit by the soft luminescence of the alien data. "We've found something extraordinary here," he stated, the weight of history and discovery heavy in his voice. "This isn't just about exploration anymore. It's about understanding a message left for us across time." Their mission had evolved, no longer just a search for alien artifacts, but a quest to bridge a gap between ancient knowledge and modern understanding. The air in the chamber seemed to thrum with potential, as if eager to reveal its secrets to those brave enough to listen. The revelation of the galaxy model within the orb, set against the backdrop of the alien cathedral's star maps, cast a new light on their mission. Captain Volt, Corin, and Sila stood encircled by the data streams flowing from the panels, their faces illuminated by the shifting hues that flickered with the life of 1,000 suns. "This technology, it's not just about mapping stars," Volt mused, his voice echoing off the smooth metallic walls which shimmered as if breathing in time with the orb's pulsations. "It's about harmony, a balance in the cosmos that they sought to maintain, or perhaps restore." Sila nodded, her attention fixed on a sequence of glyphs that shifted from abstract patterns to distinct shapes, depicting solar systems in alignment. "There's a predictive element here," she said, pointing to a series of celestial alignments and their calculated impacts on distant worlds. They were anticipating cosmic events and preparing for them. The air was filled with the scent of ancient stone mixed with a hint of something floral, likely emanating from microorganisms living within the alien structure's walls, remnants of biotechnology that once might have served both aesthetic and practical purposes. The sensation was not just of touching history, but of engaging with a living relic. As they delved deeper into the data, a low vibration began to resonate through the chamber floor, a sensation that could be felt more than heard, stirring the fine dust around their feet into tiny dancing motes. "Feel that?" Corin asked, his eyes narrowing as he placed a hand against one of the pulsating panels. "The structure is reacting to our interactions. We're not just observers here. We're part of the system now." Volt stepped closer to the orb, his reflection distorted in its swirling depths. He reached out, hesitating for a moment before touching the surface. The colors inside the orb accelerated, swirling faster, merging into a bright, blinding point of light that momentarily enveloped the room. When the light dimmed, the orb revealed a new set of images. This time, a series of planets in distress, their atmospheres thinning, their surfaces showing signs of environmental collapse. A stark warning of a future foretold by the ancients. "This was their legacy, not just to chart the heavens but to warn us," Volt said, his voice a mix of awe and resolve. The implications were profound. The data encoded in the cathedral was more than scientific. It was a message across time about the fragility of worlds, including their own. "Look here," Sila called out, drawing their attention to a panel showing the ancient civilization's efforts to mitigate these cosmic threats. Engineering feats that suggested advanced knowledge of planetary restoration. Volt felt a chill as he considered the parallels to their own world's environmental struggles. They were trying to save their world, or perhaps others, he speculated, the weight of that realization settling over him. As the team prepared to document everything, to take this knowledge back home, the chamber gave one final shiver, a reminder that the planet was still active, still part of a larger unfolding story. "We need to understand all we can here," Volt stated firmly. "There's knowledge here, powerful enough to change courses, to save worlds." The mystery of the alien cathedral was unfolding, layer by layer, each revelation a step closer to understanding not just the ancient civilization's fate, but potentially their own. Revelations from the ancient orb not only underscored their mission's gravity, but also heightened their resolve to delve deeper into the secrets held within the alien cathedral. With the information about potential planetary crises, Captain Volt's team was now more than explorers. They were custodians of potential salvation for their own world. As they ventured further into the cathedral, the air grew denser, filled with a subtle, spicy aroma that hinted at the organic technology perhaps still alive within the walls. Each step echoed softly in the vast chamber, their footfalls a counterpoint to the whisper of air circulating through ancient systems, revitalized by their presence. "This place is more than a repository of knowledge," Volt remarked, running his hand along a wall that vibrated slightly under his touch. "It feels like a nexus of energy, a power source of some sort." The team reached a new chamber where the walls were lined with cylindrical structures that pulsed with a soft, blue glow. The cylinders were connected by a network of thin, silver filaments that formed a shimmering web across the ceiling. The effect was mesmerizing, like gazing into a starlit sky. Corin, who had been examining the filaments with a portable scanner, looked up. "These aren't just decorative," he announced, his voice tinged with excitement. "They're part of a complex energy distribution system, possibly powering the entire structure." Sila approached one of the cylinders, her fingers hovering inches from its surface. As she moved her hands, the glow intensified, responding to her proximity. "It's interactive. Try aligning your movements with the pulsations," she suggested. Volt and Corin joined her, synchronizing their movements to the rhythmic glowing of the cylinders. To their astonishment, a section of the floor began to elevate. transforming into a platform that rose towards the center of the room, illuminated by beams of light that seemed to materialize from nowhere. The platform stopped, and they found themselves at eye level with a series of holographic displays that flickered to life, showing rotating images of various planets, their atmospheres, and ecosystems. The display was not just a record, but a real-time monitoring system, showing the status of countless worlds in a network of care that spanned the galaxy. "Look, these planets are not in our star maps," Scylla pointed out, tracing the holographic images with her fingers. They were caretakers, not just of their own world, but of many. Volt's mind raced with the implications. Their technology could have applications we've never even considered. Environmental restoration, climate control, possibly even terraforming. The chamber suddenly darkened, and the holographic planets dimmed, transitioning to display a series of cryptic symbols and diagrams that none of them could immediately decipher. The shift suggested a conditional access, a deeper layer of information that required more than just physical interaction. "We need to understand their language, their symbols," Volt decided, his gaze fixed on the flickering holograms. "Whatever secrets they're guarding, they pertain not just to their past, but potentially our future." Determined, the team set about decoding the symbols, each member absorbed in the task, their senses tuned to the nuances of the chamber's responses. The quest for knowledge was no longer just an archaeological pursuit, but a race to unlock the potential to avert future calamities, forewarned by a long-lost civilization. Deep within the ancient alien cathedral, the deciphering of cryptic symbols had become an engrossing endeavor for Captain Volt's team. The holographic displays flickered with alien characters, the mysterious glyphs casting a soft, intermittent glow that reflected thoughtfully off their determined faces. "Notice the repetition here," Scylla pointed out, tapping at a recurring symbol that resembled an intertwined spiral. "It shows up every time the system references what looks like planetary conditions." Volt, absorbing every detail, murmured his appreciation. "It could be a key to their environmental control technologies. If we decode this, we might access more than just data. We could uncover their methods." The room was saturated with a cool, earthy scent that rose from the stone floors, a reminder of the structure's age and the organic integration of its technology. Each breath they took felt heavy with the dust of millennia, yet there was a vibrancy in the air, a sense of living history that enveloped them. As Corin aligned another segment of the hologram with the spiral symbol, the platform they stood on responded with a slight, almost imperceptible elevation, enhancing their view of the displays. The walls around them, lined with the glowing filaments, pulsed in a slow, deliberate pattern that seemed to synchronize with their progress in cracking the code. Whatever this civilization was trying to preserve or protect, they built redundancies into their systems, Corin observed, his voice echoing slightly in the vast chamber. "It's like they prepared for their own disappearance." Suddenly, a panel on the far wall slid open, revealing a narrow corridor that had been concealed until now. The air that swept in from this newly revealed passage carried a hint of moisture and a faint floral aroma, suggesting the presence of a biologically active environment beyond. Volt stepped toward the opening, peering into the shadowed corridor. "This could lead to the heart of their operation. Let's see where this path takes us," he proposed, his tone a mix of command and curiosity. With careful steps, the team ventured into the corridor, the light from the holographic room spilling into the darkness ahead and illuminating their way. The walls here were closer, more intimate, and lined with more intricate depictions of celestial mechanics and planetary alignments. The detailed artistry was not only informative but also profoundly beautiful, each etching telling stories of cosmic balance and interstellar responsibility. As they moved deeper, the corridor gradually widened, opening into a larger chamber that buzzed with an unexpected energy. At its center stood an elaborate console, surrounded by seats that were molded into the floor itself, suggesting that this place was a hub for real-time planetary management. Volt approached the console, his hands hovering over the controls which activated instinctively at his touch, lighting up with icons and graphs that detailed ecological statuses, atmospheric data, and energy cycles. "This is it. This is their control room," he whispered, almost to himself, overwhelmed by the implications. They were monitoring and perhaps even stabilizing whole ecosystems. The mystery of the alien cathedral was unfolding into a narrative of a civilization not just advanced in technology but profoundly ethical in its application, stewards of planets far beyond their own. The room hummed softly with the power of dormant systems slowly awakening, eager to share their secrets with those who had come so far to learn them. Each breath the team took was now a breath of potential, each moment one step closer to understanding and possibly saving their own world. Volt exhaled slowly, his fingers hovering just above the illuminated controls of the ancient console. The air in the chamber carried an electric charge, faint yet tangible, like the atmosphere before a storm. The glowing glyphs pulsed in a rhythm, responding to their presence, waiting for input. Scylla ran a hand along the smooth surface of the control panel, her expression tightening as more symbols cascaded into view. This wasn't just a monitoring station. They had active influence over planetary systems. These controls weren't passive. They were designed for intervention. Volt's pulse quickened. "You're saying they didn't just observe? These people could shape planetary conditions?" Corin leaned in, studying the readouts. "More than that, these aren't just climate patterns. These are stabilizing equations. They had the power to alter weather cycles, regulate atmospheric density, even redirect ocean currents. They weren't just scientists, they were planetary architects." A quiet reverence settled over them. The weight of discovery pressed against Volt's chest. If this system still functioned, even in a diminished state, what else was hidden within this cathedral of knowledge? What had the ancient civilization feared enough to construct a fortress of secrets? The console suddenly reacted to their proximity. A section of the holographic display dissolved into fluid motion, shifting into an active sequence. The scrolling text transformed into a projection, one depicting a planet. Not just any planet. Volt stiffened as recognition struck. "That's us," he murmured. Their world appeared on the display, surrounded by streams of data, atmospheric measurements, oceanic heat maps, an ongoing assessment, one that should have been impossible. Corin frowned, adjusting his scanner. "This system has been observing our world for centuries, maybe longer." Scylla's fingers tightened around the edge of the console. If this database was tracking planetary collapse, then it must have warnings, projections. What did they see coming? Volt motioned for her to proceed. She navigated through the sequences, her movements fluid, almost instinctive. The display shifted again, zooming in on a new data point. The color-coded model showed rapid environmental degradation, rising temperatures, collapsing ice shelves, violent atmospheric fluctuations. The projection advanced, showing an impending event, a disturbance unlike anything recorded before. Corin's jaw tensed. That's not just environmental decay. That's external influence. Volt's breath slowed. The realization settled over him like cold steel. Something's interfering with our planet's natural balance. And whatever it is, it's accelerating. Scylla's fingers danced across the interface, shifting the projection forward. The predicted trajectory was catastrophic. "The system flagged this as an anomaly," she whispered. "It doesn't match any recorded planetary collapse. This isn't just climate deterioration. It's an engineered event." Volt straightened, his gaze dark. "Then someone is doing this deliberately." The chamber dimmed for a moment, as if reacting to their revelation. The alien structure wasn't just offering them knowledge. It was showing them a truth they weren't meant to see. Volt squared his shoulders. "We need to find out who." Volt's mind raced as the implications of the data solidified. Their planet's destabilization wasn't a natural cycle. It was deliberate, engineered with surgical precision. The alien system had been monitoring it for centuries, and now they had undeniable proof of interference. He turned to Corin, who was already studying the projection with narrowed eyes. "If this is an attack, then whoever's behind it understands planetary mechanics far beyond anything we've seen," Corin muttered. "They aren't just targeting infrastructure. They're rewriting the climate, the very foundations of ecological balance. Scylla scrolled through the readouts, her fingers moving with calculated urgency. We need to understand the method. Are they using atmospheric manipulation, gravitational shifts, something embedded within the planet itself? Volt steadied himself, focusing on strategy. First, we verify the source of the interference. If it's coming from orbit, we scan for anomalies in the ionosphere, localized energy disturbances, unusual fluctuations. If it's surface-based, we look for seismic patterns that don't fit natural tectonic movement. Corin adjusted his scanner. A system this advanced wouldn't leave obvious traces, but if they're modifying weather patterns, there has to be an energy signature. No way you tamper with planetary systems on this scale without something measurable. Scylla pulled up another sequence, aligning timestamps with planetary shifts. Here, she pointed at a concentrated burst of activity at the poles. This isn't gradual deterioration. It's a controlled destabilization, starting at key pressure points. Oceanic heat absorption, jet stream redirection. They're forcing an imbalance to compound over time. Volt exhaled, the pieces falling into place. They're making it look like natural decay, a slow collapse rather than a direct attack. Corin straightened, his expression grim. Which means they've been at this for generations. By the time anyone notices, it's irreversible. Volt's grip tightened around the edge of the console. Then we stop it before it reaches that point. Scylla shifted her stance, anticipation tightening her frame. How? If this manipulation is ongoing, it's coming from a live source. Volt nodded. Exactly. We trace the anomalies to their point of origin. This system. He gestured to the ancient interface, its pulsing lights casting shadows on their faces. Is still functional. If this civilization could detect planetary threats, they must have had countermeasures. Corin rubbed his chin. Assuming we can activate them, we don't even know how much of this still works. Volt turned back to the display. Then we figure it out. We match the energy signatures, pinpoint the interference, and isolate its source. Scylla's fingers hovered over the controls. If we do find it, what's the next move? Volt's jaw set. Neutralization. If it's a satellite network, we dismantle it. If it's ground-based, we disrupt it at the source. And if it's someone actively pulling the strings, Corin met his gaze. Then we go after them. A heavy silence settled between them, thick with unspoken resolve. The cathedral's walls flickered, the ancient system seeming to acknowledge their decision. Volt turned toward the controls, his voice steel. Let's get to work. Volt stood before the alien console, his mind calculating the next steps with a clarity honed by years of command. The system's data had given them the first piece of the puzzle. Someone was manipulating planetary stability. Now, they needed precision to track the source and a plan to dismantle it. Scylla, already parsing through sequences, flicked through layers of data. There's a repeating fluctuation in the lower thermosphere, she reported, eyes flicking between projections. It's not random atmospheric interference. It's a signal, timed, controlled. Volt moved closer, watching as the reading stabilized into a pattern. If it's controlled, it has a transmitter. Find it. Corin adjusted his scanner, fine-tuning the sensitivity. If it's ground-based, it'll show up as heat anomalies or energy bursts along fault lines. If it's orbital, we'll see low-frequency disruptions in the planet's magnetosphere. Scylla's fingers danced over the controls, isolating the interference. There, mid-stratosphere, she confirmed. A station, small, concealed within shifting cloud cover. Whoever designed it knew how to hide in plain sight. Volt exhaled, considering the approach. Weapons platform? Corin shook his head. No active defense systems, just an array of transmitters, relaying data to an off-site location. Volt's expression darkened. Meaning whoever's responsible isn't here, they're controlling this remotely. Scylla leaned forward. That means we have two objectives: take down the transmitter and backtrace the signal to whoever's behind it. Volt's mind mapped out the operation. We take the station offline first. If we don't, they'll see us coming the moment we trace them. Corin's brow furrowed. Bringing it down won't be as simple as shutting off a switch. If it's embedded in the stratosphere, it's either tethered to a geostationary anchor or self-sustaining. If it falls uncontrolled, we risk a debris field re-entering the atmosphere. Volt considered this. We don't destroy it, we disable it. His eyes shifted to Scylla. Can we reroute its function? Force it to loop false data instead of transmitting live readings? Scylla bit her lip, scanning the configurations. Possible. If we mimic its broadcast patterns and feed back a duplicate stream, it'll mask our interference. But we'd have to be inside the station system to do it. Volt nodded. Then we go in. Corin let out a slow breath. And if someone's still inside, monitoring? Volt's voice was steady. Then we adapt. The strategy was set. The plan had weight, built on realism. A frontal assault was unnecessary. Subtlety was their best weapon. Their objective wasn't destruction, it was control. Scylla initiated the final sequences, locking in the coordinates. The station's location pulsed on their display like a waiting adversary. Volt turned to his crew, the air around them thick with resolve. We move fast, we take control, and we find out who's been playing God with our world. Corin tightened his grip on his gear. Let's finish this. The cathedral's lights flickered once, as if acknowledging the battle ahead. The final phase had begun. The ancient cathedral's soft glow flickered once more as Volt and his crew locked in their final coordinates. The station loomed ahead, hidden within the swirling cloud layers, silent but alive with treachery. The mission was clear: take control, disable the signal, and trace the architects of this silent war before they could inflict irreversible harm. Volt's grip on his rifle tightened as the Marauder descended into the cover of the lower stratosphere. Lightning cracked in the distance, illuminating the station's metallic framework against the churning sky. The structure wasn't abandoned. Faint movement registered on their scanners. Someone was inside. "Looks like they left the lights on for us," Corin muttered. Volt's jaw clenched. "Then let's knock." Scylla prepped the override codes, her fingers steady despite the tension tightening around them. "I can force their airlock, but if they detect an intrusion, they might wipe the logs. We need that transmission trace." Volt's voice was like iron. "No alarms, no destruction. We take it without a sound." The docking clamps latched onto the station with a deep vibration, the pressure change palpable in their boots. The airlock hissed open, revealing a narrow corridor bathed in sterile white light. It was too quiet, too clean. This wasn't a research outpost. It was a control hub, designed for precision, not habitation. They moved in calculated strides, rifles poised. The walls pulsed with embedded conduits, carrying encrypted data through the station's veins. Every step further into the core felt like an intrusion upon something meant to remain unseen. Corin signaled, and Volt halted. A figure stood at the central console, his back to them, absorbed in the screen's streaming planetary simulations. No uniform, no insignia, just a man orchestrating an extinction event, like an artist perfecting a brushstroke. Volt raised his weapon. "Step away from the controls." The man didn't flinch. Instead, he sighed, as if their presence was an inconvenience. "Took you long enough." Scylla's pulse quickened. "Who are you?" The figure turned slowly, his expression eerily calm. "A scientist, a strategist, a necessary evil." Corin's voice was edged with controlled fury. "You're destabilizing an entire planet, and you call that necessary?" The man tilted his head, studying them like an entomologist observing insects in a glass case. "You misunderstand. This isn't destruction. It's course correction. Your species, violent, reckless, stubbornly short-sighted, refuses to adapt. I'm merely accelerating what's inevitable." Volt's stare was ice-cold. "You're playing God with billions of lives." The man's lips curved in something that might have been amusement. "And yet, here you are, standing in a station you should have never found, speaking a language no one should have decoded. Tell me, Captain, if I'm playing God, what does that make you?" Volt didn't blink. "The reckoning." In one swift motion he fired. The blast struck the console beside the man, disabling the transmitter, cutting off the link to whoever had been pulling the strings. The station's lights flickered violently, systems failing one by one. The scientist exhaled slowly. It won't matter. You're still too late. Volt stepped forward, the storm outside raging behind him. You don't know what too late means, but you will. Sila initiated the data transfer. Corin secured the station. They weren't just stopping an attack, they were sending a message. Whoever had dared to play with Earth's fate had made one critical mistake. They thought humanity wouldn't notice. They thought humanity wouldn't fight back. They were wrong. Volt's shot had done more than silence the scientist's twisted monologue. It had severed the invisible chains tethering Earth to an unseen predator. The station trembled as systems collapsed in a cascade of flickering lights and failing circuits. Warning sirens blared in panicked bursts, the facility's core struggling to sustain itself after the disruption. Sila secured the data transfer, her breath sharp and measured. Got it. Every signal log, every transmission point. We have the coordinates. Volt turned to the scientist, who remained unnervingly composed despite the destruction unraveling around him. Who gave the order? His voice was steady, lethal. The man tilted his head, amusement flickering behind his unreadable gaze. You think cutting one thread changes the loom? You don't understand what you're interfering with. Corin stepped closer, his silhouette framed against the dying light of the control panels. Then explain it to us before we take apart every station, every link in your chain. The scientist exhaled, almost pitying. Your kind always assumes it's about war, but this was never about conquest. It's about balance. The weight of one civilization tips the scales of an entire system. Too aggressive, too volatile, and collapse becomes unavoidable. This was mercy. Volt's fists clenched. You don't get to decide that. The scientist studied him for a long moment before his lips curled in something resembling a smirk. And yet, here you are, proving me right. Volt didn't fire this time. He didn't need to. The station was already tearing itself apart, unable to withstand the interference they had forced upon it. Data streamed across the failing displays, revealing planetary models shifting in real time, climate disruptions beginning to stabilize. The signal had been cut off. The damage could still be undone. The scientist finally moved, stepping away from the console, as if conceding the battle, but not the war. You've bought your world time, nothing more. Volt's stare was stone. Time is all we need. Sila gestured sharply. We have to move. Now. Corin dragged the scientist forward, not as a prisoner but as proof that this was never a natural decay but a calculated betrayal. They would make sure the Galactic Council saw it for what it was. As they rushed back through the collapsing corridors, Volt glanced one last time at the shattered control panels. The war against their extinction had been waged in silence, in the cold depths of space where no one had thought to look. But humanity had looked, and they had fought. The docking ramp sealed behind them, and the Marauder detached from the failing station just as the facility's framework collapsed inward, vanishing into the clouds below. Volt exhaled, shoulders squaring. Set course for the nearest council outpost. Sila nodded. They won't be able to ignore this. Corin glanced out at the void ahead. And when they ask how we found this place? Volt met his gaze, the fire in his expression unmistakable. Because we go where no one else dares, and we don't back down. The stars stretched before them, uncharted, unclaimed, and no longer safe for those who had thought Earth was theirs to break. In the void of space, where stars collide and galaxies whisper secrets of the old wars, an unspoken rule echoes: never target a human. This galactic decree, as ancient as the star lanes, framed Commander Jackson Hale's mission as he perched before the sprawling star map. His ship, the Silent Vanguard, drifted silently near the edge of the Orpheus sector, hidden among the ice asteroids. Today, Jackson's steely gaze wasn't on the dangers lurking in the asteroid belt, nor was it on the usual suspects of pirate ambushes or rogue traders. Instead, His focus was fixed on the historical anomalies he'd found in the Galactic Archives, a series of incidents missing from the public records, all involving human targets who miraculously survived attempts on their lives. His fingers traced the hologram's light, stopping over the last known coordinates of an infamous assassination attempt that had failed, mysteriously aborted by the alien hit squad. "Ever wonder why they call us the Untouchables, Leo?" Jackson mused aloud, glancing at his second-in-command, who floated quietly by the navigation panel. Leo, a man of few words, shrugged slightly, a gesture barely perceptible in the low gravity of the command deck. "Maybe they fear what they don't understand, and they don't understand us," he replied, his voice as calm as the starlight. Jackson chuckled softly, a sound almost lost in the soft whir of the ship's life support systems. "Or perhaps they've felt the wrath of humanity once too many," he added, turning back to the map. His eyes narrowed as he zoomed in on a sector known for its lawlessness, marked by the remnants of a battle where a human fleet had once turned the tide against overwhelming odds. The soft beep of an incoming transmission interrupted his thoughts. Jackson tapped the console, and the air in front of him shimmered as the message decrypted. "Commander Hale, you are requested at the Galactic Council. It seems they need a human perspective on some recent incidents." Leo raised an eyebrow, his usual stoic demeanor giving way to curiosity. "Council summons don't come lightly. Should I ready the jump drive?" "In a moment," Jackson said, his mind racing with the implications of the summons. As he prepared to leave, he cast one last glance at the star map, its stars blinking like distant eyes in the dark. He knew this mission might uncover truths that some in the galaxy wished remained hidden, but as the only species in the cosmos never targeted for assassination, it was up to him to find out why and ensure it stayed that way. The engines of the silent Vanguard hummed to life, a low rumble that resonated through the hull as it prepared to bridge the vast distances of space. Jackson settled into his command chair, his face set in determination. Whatever secrets awaited them at the Galactic Council, he was ready. After all, in the vast, whispering darkness of space, some truths demand to be heard. As the silent Vanguard slipped through the cosmic veil, starlight scattered across Jackson's face, illuminating the contemplative sharpness in his eyes. The jump to the Galactic Council was smooth, a testament to the ship's advanced navigation systems and Leo's precise handling. The transition from the solitude of space to the bustling hub of the Council's orbiting station always left Jackson with a mix of awe and trepidation.